Hello and welcome to Selling in a Skirt with Judy Hoberman. I'm Judy. For those of you that are brand spanking new, welcome. And for those of you that have been with us before, welcome back. Selling in a Skirt is all about connection, community, and creating relationships. It's about empowering professional women and encouraging men to champion for and with women. Now, what I love the most is I get to share incredible women and men with you. I get to hear their journey with you and why they do what they do and how they're going to empower the next generation of leaders. And today, no exception. It is my great pleasure to introduce my guest today, John Lanier. So I'm going to read a little bit about John, and then we're going to talk to him directly. So John excels at sharing profit rainmaking super trends, which enables companies to go up against Goliaths and win. Something to talk about. He's a popular speaker with his highly effective program, Profit Rainmaking, 7 universal truths to loyal customers, exceptional operations, and inspired teams. He's the CEO and founder of Middle Market Methods, a powerful company that's a consulting firm founded in 2006, working to dramatically reduce execution risk and double companies between $25 million to $250 million in sales. He's known as the resultant, as his customers have coined the phrase for him. So, welcome, John. We are so excited to have you here, and we want everyone to know all about you. So, welcome.
I mirror the excitement. It's a pleasure.
Great. Okay, so I gave some highlights about you. I want you to tell us more about who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do it. So, what about your work excites you the most?
Let's go back to the David and Goliath point. I really get excited about helping middle market companies cultivate their latent potential for the benefit of enterprise value. It is that thing which keeps me excited from the moment I wake up to the moment I turn in, and those are usually long days and weekends.
Yeah, I bet they are, because we always try so hard to coordinate our schedules, and you're always so busy, which is great. But I want to start with this point. Every journey has a backstory. So my question to you is, what inspired you to choose this path, and what's been the most pivotal moment in your career so far?
I reflect on this a lot, and I've resolved that it's a mixture of somebody uh, upstairs in charge, punctuated by a little serendipity. I refer to myself as a pound puppy. You can't get papers on me. I have enjoyed mentorship by some phenomenal human beings in my 40 plus year career. And where I sit today is a series of butterfly events that have culminated in a passion. And I am that guy for whom you've heard find something you love doing and you'll never work again a day in your life. Well, I've been playing at this now for the better part of 25 years. And as long as the body and the mind hold up, I'm at it. So it's more specifically, I was at GE Capital and was encouraged to be part of an experiment. And the gentleman who hired me to GE Capital described this marketing, and I know this is near and dear to your heart as a sales trainer and a sales professional. Uh, I thought I understood marketing, having toted a bag for about half my career, but I
Mhm.
learned what it really is in a Procter and Gamble type mode in this experiment. And we, in the G Capital side of things, of course, that was financial services, and the the money is no greener than anybody else's. Tended not to be structured that differently than anybody else's. So how do you differentiate a commodity? And in that era, we were regarded year in, year out. This was a tail end of the Welch era, as the world's most admired company. And some genius asked a really good question. So why don't we offer our toolbox to people to do business with us? And it wasn't just the toolbox; it was coaching on how to uh, implement it. So 4 of us were bouncing around all over the country doing free project work, uh, in order to land business. And what I noticed is that 3 out of 5 of those projects were for lower middle market portfolio companies of private equity sponsors. And this was in an era when financial engineering uh, was yielding to something else. And that something else turned out to be proactive, operationally oriented value creation. And it is still going strong. So that's how I got here. And the background of process and other things I've had in my life, finance, uh, it all created a pretty interesting algorithm, and I use it for the benefit of my clients every day. So that's a longer version of how I got here, but the uh, the journey of 10,000 miles starts with a single step. I've had several single steps that were mostly in the right direction, and here we sit.
That's really interesting. Tell me how you came up with profit rainmaking super trends, because that is something that speaks volumes. I know you're very proud of it, and it's something that I think people would really want to know and understand it.
Good question. There are things over which we have minimal control, and there are things over which we have a lot of control. And part of the wisdom is knowing that line of demarcation and then what you're going to do about it. Of the things that we have limited control, we need to have contingencies for reaction, and it's almost a risk management phenomenon. Over other things, it's opportunistic. How do we differentiate in the market for purposes of satisfying customers and ultimately creating enterprise value? So the profit rainmaking mantra recognizes that the objective of business in a capitalist environment is creating enterprise value. Well, the only way that's done is by satisfying customers. So, how do you do that? You have to have a unique value proposition which resonates for their benefit. That is to say, it explains why they voluntarily exchange their cash for your goods or services. And in contrast to doing it for somebody else. The second thing is, how do you produce that which they want to buy? That's an operational comment. And then
Mhm.
the third thing is the talent which stewards all of the above. So there are three major variables there to create profit rainmaking, and it's inspired teams, exceptional execution, and in happy, loyal customers. And all of that coincidentally rolls up under a book title I'm working on called Profit Rainmaking. So it's the story of what I've encountered working with exceptional people who, from multiple perspectives, investors, lenders, investment bankers, operators, and their perspectives and what differentiation for value creation under the profit rainmaking umbrella is all about.
And that new book is coming out when?
Next year.
Okay, well, we're almost into next year. So there you go. Okay, so really what I wanted to start with is we're going to dive into something that we talked about called the winning the war for talent. So,
Correct.
in your opinion, given all the changes and all the innovations over the past few years, there's definitely increasing pressure to attract, to hire, and to retain the best talent. Yet, so many leaders struggle to truly value the expertise that they're looking for. So, what's your perspective on this so called war for talent?
Well, it is a war for talent. It didn't start yesterday, and it won't end tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So the mission is a journey. It's not a destination. It'll never end. So thinking otherwise is sort of foolhardy. But why do people want to go work somewhere? And we live in a very mercenary environment for talent. It is very mobile, and more so with each successive generation. So the science behind this basically says they to attract, retain, motivate, and career path talent, you first have to offer something they enjoy doing. There's also the cultural aspect. They enjoy the team with whom they do it. And then finally, it aligns with their vision, their aspirational vision for a combination of their career and their personal aspirations. So that those are the three key ingredients. And it is up to leaders to understand that because it manifests in certain things like what you look for. Uh, and that may be some people call it a job description, but it has two primary categories: is technical and behavioral skills, because culture is a big deal. And as Drucker
Mhm.
said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So then, borrowing from marketing channels, uh, where do you find this type of talent? Where does it hang out? And then how do you get to it? And there's some interesting manifestations relative to the workforce that I find particularly interesting. And let me preface this by saying that I am very obviously not a woman, so I cannot speak for women per se. But my soulmate of over 40 years and our two daughters are constant sources for me
Yeah.
in perspectives and in insights, which I solicit frequently. In fact, my better half is a partner in this business. So our daughters are highly educated, very ambitious, and accomplished. Uh, and obviously, what I'm going to say reflects their cohort. In that one, this is interesting. And if you go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for example, you can pull up some pretty interesting things. And I'm going to
Mhm.
approximate, I'm not going to get into tenths of a percentage point, but in general terms, you have half the workforce is female. And the percentage has been consistent for at least a decade. Uh, Half the certifications and licenses in business are female. Logically, half the target market is female, but only about a tenth of the C suite in any particular company is female. Something's not right there. And I can tell you every day when I work with smaller companies, it just sticks out like crab's eyes in terms of the C suite. So, what better way could you differentiate if you're in a truly David and Goliath saga? And half your target market is female and half your talent base is female. Why in the world wouldn't you, in your leadership ranks, reflect the market you're trying to cultivate and build a loyal customer relationship with? To me, that's common sense. And I coined a term uh, that I think sort of compels us to pay attention, and I call it daddies with daughter issues. So why is that? If most of it is male, why aren't we paying more attention to that? And I think there's a clarion call there for if you're at a NASCAR event, you might hear something like "Gentlemen, start your engines." Well, I'm going to twist that a little bit and say, "Gentlemen, check your bias," because you're missing an opportunity. Um, so if I may continue on that theme a little bit, um, what kind of differentiable skill sets are uh, do we need to focus on in the future? And it basically boils down to two categories. There's the technical skills. And I mean, if you look at like engineering degrees or people pursuing veterinary medicine, women are earning more advanced degrees than men. So
True.
automatically, you'd be nuts not to look at that. Uh, but I also deeply, deeply respect, and there's science behind this, that women are far better than guys when it comes to the interpersonal skills. I mean, I think it's a superpower. Why aren't we trying to? I'm going to use exploit in a good way for economic
Yeah.
reasons. Why aren't we trying to tap into that to exploit and be more differentiated in the market? So how we look to our customers is one thing, but how we attract and groom talent is another thing, and that can manifest in how we train and develop people, how we promote people in career pathing. One of the one of the things that I spend a lot of time on with my clients And scalability is a big issue. In the
Mhm.
lower middle market, where I predominantly play, the default control mechanism, irrespective of gender, the default control mechanism is control. And that works okay until you run out of bandwidth, then what? Uh, so uh, we, over time, our technical chops must necessarily yield to interpersonal skills. Emotional intelligence is another way to look at that, because to be successful to scale, we have to execute through people. Well, again, look at who's available in the workforce, and why not tap into a gender which is blessed with the DNA to inherently be better than that, better than guys at that. How do you develop and nurture that? And I think things like mentoring. If I were and by the way, this is kind of coaching I have provided our daughters as well as their friends. That's a very gratifying thing when they say, "I'm never worried about a conversation you're going to have with any of my friends." Boy, that hits me where it counts, and I just love it. It's what interview questions when they ask you what you want to know about them as an employer. One of the things that I would ask, and I can't wait to coach my granddaughters maybe one day on this, if I'm blessed with granddaughters, uh, if Judy and I are blessed with granddaughters. By the way, my better half's name is Judy too. Uh,
Yes.
is talk to me about how you mentor new hires. And it said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "I want to learn the ropes. So how do you help me help you?" I think that's a great question, because
Hmm.
it I very much enjoy, and I abide by an Einstein principle. I'd rather know the right question than be sitting on the right answer. But if you ask certain questions the right way that won't lend themselves to binary answers like yes, no, which are worthless questions anyway, you're going to find out if that's the employer you want to bet your career on. Because
Hmm.
if they aren't keen, and I mean keen, on developing your latent potential, you got to ask yourself, do I want to take a risk on them if they aren't willing to invest in me? Um, so, how do we tap into people's inherent skill sets, cultivate them, and continue, getting back to an original theme, continue to make ourselves more differentiated in the market? I think it's common sense. But as someone
I
a
think
lot
it's the
smarter
million
than me,
dollar.
pardon?
Yeah, I said I think it's the million dollar question.
Agreed. So we're on the same page on that. Uh,
Yeah.
it gets back to something I'm going to struggle on attribution here, but the rhetorical question: why is common sense so uncommon?
I
Anyway,
don't know.
obviously, I'm fired up about this stuff because I see
I.
potential all over the place. And why would
Hmm.
you step over $100 bill to pick up a nickel? I mean, there is that to borrow something from the Gold Rush miners. There's gold in them Dar Hills. Why aren't we mining it?
Well, it's so interesting that you have these opinions about this, because I mean it's very refreshing, because there's a lot of companies that will bring me in and ask me, how do you attract and retain women? And some of them are just asking the question because it's like the buzzword, and some of them truly want to do something. And it's from when I started out in financial services in 1990, it's always been about attracting and retention. It's always been that male, female, but especially women, because I was the only one that was in my position at the time. And it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. Now, are there more women in financial services and in healthcare and in engineering and in and? Yes, there are. But it still doesn't represent the world, the United States, 50%. Still doesn't do that. But my question always is there something unique that we can be doing? And I'll give you a story, and then I'm going to ask that question for you. There was a company that brought me in and asked me to help them hire women. I asked the question, why? And what he said to me was, I want you to look at our website. I want you to tell me what you think, and then come back and we'll talk about this. And this gentleman was going to, well, I'm using that term loosely, this gentleman was going to offer me a lot of money to help him bring women in. So I go to his website, and they've won every award you could possibly think of, everything. I mean, they're very, very, very successful. I look at the leadership team, and it's all men. And really, the only thing that changed was the color of their tie, because it was the same man all the way across. Right? So I go back and I call him and I congratulate him on all his success. And I asked again, why women? And he said to me, can I be perfectly honest with you? And I said, well, if we're going to work together, we're going to have to be perfectly honest with each other. And he said, women are the buzzword. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yes, it's the buzzword. And I said, what does that mean? He said, everybody's talking about it, so we should have a few of them. And I said, okay, so are you going to do anything different? Like what you were talking about, mentoring, coaching, anything different? He said, absolutely not. So I said, okay, so when they fail, what are you going to do? He said, you know so many women, you'll just bring us more. And I said, I would never put people into a position, male or female, that they were going to fail. I don't think I'm the right person for you. And he let me have it with both barrels of every word you could possibly think of, 4 letters and more. And all I said I just listened. And then I said to him, this was definitely what I needed. It was the confirmation that I made the right decision. So with that said, he obviously wasn't really looking for women. He was just looking to check a box, which I have done. I mean, I've been a box check, I've checked boxes for people. So do you think, other than mentoring, do you think that there is anything that companies can do to attract this amazing group of people that can add so much to the bottom line? Because if you look at statistics, women do bring a lot that will change the course of their companies and their businesses. So other than mentoring, is there anything that you can think of, any trends or anything that excite you or think that, wow, this would be great?
It's a really insightful question. And I'll get back to my natural traits and give you an answer. One is
Okay.
process and the other is metrics. So I would want to start to get somebody's attention by things I alluded to earlier. How does your workforce compare demographically to your target market?
Right.
That's a pretty strong hint that you're either in sync or out. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of process, I want to look at what I'm looking for, where I'm looking for it, and I want to deliberately, by the way, this taps into something that I think is part of this. There are a lot of material variables in your answer. There's
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
pretty complex regression equation here, but just think about, if you will, the practicality of some things I'm going to mention. Only 1 in 10 hiring managers on the planet has been trained in how to interview people. That is an appalling
True.
statistic. That is an
Yes. Agreed.
appalling statistic. So even if we had the right job description, even if we went to the right universities and through the right recruiting channels, the fact that we don't train people who should be making the ultimate hiring decision for who they want on their team, if we aren't training, we automatically set ourselves up to reduce our odds of success. In our performance management system, what are we rewarding? Do we have goals? Do we have measures? Do we have feedback? And one of the more interesting, I'm going to date myself here, one of the more interesting things about performance management for my cohort versus our daughter's cohort, and I think it's a trend that's only getting more amplified, not less, is that when I was a pup, you got an annual performance review whether you needed it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
you just prayed you didn't screw something up close to the review date, because anchoring by said, if you had a great week before your interview, boy, you got a glowing one. If you had a fumble, you got a bad one. And you didn't know until that time, because it was that staid routine thing. And also there was a tendency, if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Well, that dog does not hunt anymore. The modern workforce is that of dynamic performance feedback, dynamic, and that's a good thing. And
Mm-hmm.
some of the more impressive performance management systems I'm aware of, yes, you will have an annual target, but a performance review should never, ever be a surprise, ever. So how do you give that? You can do it relative to staff meetings, one-on-ones, lunch and learns. There are ways to do this. We eat 3 times a day. Pizza's a big part of it, and bagels, depending on the meal. Can you use that to multitask to give some feedback about how things are going so that people feel connected in all this stuff? So there are things we can do at the supervisory level. There are things that we can do at the performance level. And if we don't project a career path for people, um, then we may not optimize our opportunity, because if they don't see a future with you and they're that good, a recruiter's
Yeah.
going to find them, or they're going to find it themselves, and they will
Hmm.
self-select for something else. So to this, there's a story relative to this phenomenon that positions a little different way, and I'll call the heroine of this story Sylvia. But a chance encounter with this person, she was lamenting. By the way, she had a reputation of being the Pied Piper of talent. Everybody wanted to work for her. Uh, but just as they were, and I talked to my clients about a progression from competence in a new position to proficiency and then subject matter expertise. Was they were going up that curve and getting closer to subject matter expertise, big guns were coming and picking off her talent. And it was frustrating because she happened to be in a type of business model. It wasn't 501c3, but she was in a type of business model where she really couldn't compete with the big bucks type comps. And it tended to be individual contributors and highly leveraged compensation packages. She did not have that luxury. But I listened to her, and I do my thing. I ask stupid questions until every now and then one's not so stupid. And I said, Sylvia, uh, what if your problem's a solution? And she sort of looked at me like I was from another planet, but I could tell we were connecting. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, you got this reputation, right? I said, yeah. I said, well, you know you're going to be picked off, right? Yeah. Why not go to the people picking you off and flip this thing and say, look, I'm okay with this, but there are people you think have potential, but you're just not going to train them in time. Send them to me. I'll groom them and get them ready and develop them, and I'll even tell you when they're ready. And she was able to turn, I call it a leaky bucket phenomenon. She was
Hmm.
able to turn her pickpockets into marketing or recruiting channels, and it worked beautifully. But something else happened, and this was really interesting to watch. The people who were being picked off and opted out tended to be individual contributors, highly leveraged, but the people who stayed were after something else. And it was sort of hiding in plain sight because she was putting out a fire and not able to notice something really special happening. And that is, the
Hmm.
people who stayed longer wanted to be her. They wanted the leadership and the management thing because they knew whether they stayed there or went, even if they left, it would be later. And what happened for her is that her effective, and she calculated it more like I do, but her effective uh, turnover cost dropped by about 40%. That's a big number. That is a
Yeah.
seriously big number. So when something's not working right, and I mentioned metrics as a personal passion on this, is that the traditional calculation of turnover is just not the right way to look at this in a modern workforce. When your denominator has people in there who have been around since dirt, that's diluting what's going on. I encourage my clients to do a rolling 90-day calculation because most of your turnover happens early, and it
Hmm.
tells you something about how good your recruitment, onboarding, and training process is. And I literally, and this may sound hyperbolic, but it's not. I have literally calculated rolling 90-day turnovers for clients where it was over 100%. Think
That's
about that.
awesome.
Over
Yeah.
100%. How expensive that is. So the process can lead you there, but again, it's a find, win, keep phenomenon. What am I looking for? Where do I find it? And hiring is just the beginning, not the end of this for the keep part. And if they
Yep.
aren't motivated, if they aren't inspired, if they don't love what they do, if they don't love their team, and they don't see it connected to something that's really important to them, you're kidding yourself if you think they're going to retire with you. It just doesn't happen. Hopefully, I
Yeah,
answered your
absolutely.
question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting that you said that because when I was an agency manager, I would talk to every single person that I recruited and I would have the same conversation with every single person because I truly believe that one of the keys or one of the magic bullets or whatever you want to call it to keeping your people is to know your people. You have to know your
Yep.
people. So I would always
Yep.
ask them, tell me why this company and what it is that you're looking for. And there were only three answers. Number one, they said they just, and I don't like the word just, but they just want to be a producer. That's it. They don't want to worry about anybody but themselves. And I said, great, let me show you the journey. Number two, they would say they wanted to go into leadership. And I would say, great, let me show you the journey. Number three, they would say, I want your job. And after I would laugh a little bit, I would say, great, let me show you the journey. But in every single case, I knew my person. I knew where they were going. And I knew when they stumbled, it was happening because of this. Or I knew when they decided to do something else, we would go back and revisit what they talked about. So, with that said, how can leaders, especially executive women, leverage those unique strengths to build these high performing teams while also balancing the demands of leadership? Because you know as well as I do that a lot of times women not only have that particular career, but they also have another job at home. So how do they
Mhm.
balance everything, trying to make everything work while they're building that team to make them, be their best, do their best?
You you bring up really good points. We know with all the bad stuff that happened during COVID, I saw some
Mm-hmm.
silver linings. And I'm not making a comment here that the whole workforce should be virtual forever because there are pros and cons to every scenario. But I've had clients who, when they could not come to work because we were in lockdown, their productivity actually went up because they looked at how they measured productivity and it wasn't relative to 8 hours, it was relative to 24. And
Correct.
the flexibility associated with this is what we need to get done. I understand that you're doubling as essentially the spouses are homeschooling their kids because school wasn't an option. So how do you do that? And work-life balance is a persnickety thing. I don't think one size fits all, but if you afford some people flexibility, just that this is what needs to be done, I help me help you figure out how to do it. I won't put clock pressure on you. I'll put day pressure on you to get it
Mm-hmm.
done. Will this work? So if we don't figure out somewhere in the middle where we can cohabitate, all we're really doing is inviting turnover. And then we're back to square one. And here's something else about talent that I didn't mention that I think is relevant for your audience. I communicate to my clientele to proactively recruit. What does that mean? Uh, I want my clients to be known in their marketplace irrespective of openings. Why would you do that? Because the worst time in the world to post is when you have an opening in peak season. You're overwhelmingly you're overwhelmingly tempted to settle, and the stats say you'll get to do it at least twice. But if you proactively recruit, then you have better odds. And one of the people I interviewed for the book I alluded to, Profit Rainmaking, said, John, I take business cards everywhere I go. And when I meet anybody, anywhere who looks like they have the it factor, I give them my card. Say, you might not be looking, but when you are, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
And this really struck me curiously. I said, where do you do this? He said, everywhere. I said, what does everywhere mean? He said,
Everywhere.
Panera, Home Depot, Kroger, it is everywhere. I said, but how do you know what their skill sets are? Doesn't matter. I'm after people with attitude. And I said,
Right.
well, you don't have open positions. He said, we always have something to do. and I put them on a project. And then it's almost like on the job interviewing. And by the time they get through with it, I know where to position them. I said, but you still didn't have an opening. He said, John, you're assuming something. I said, oh, just one thing. What is it? He says, you're assuming that everybody on the payroll is performing. So wouldn't it be a wonderful thing that I had a replacement for somebody who did not respond effectively to the performance improvement plan, that I automatically had somebody who could move into that job, and I have minimized my disruption. Well, just think about that. And this guy said, oh, but he was, I will say this, he was a piece of work in a good way. He said, John, and by the way, he had investors who were not exactly fans of his MO, but he said, I persuaded them, and he had a twinkle in his eye. And he said, because I could show how much lower my turnover was, how much higher my quality was, how much higher my on-time delivery was, how much higher my productivity was, which also meant how much more profit we made. And then they quit asking. And he sort of hinted it. I think they encouraged some other people to take a look at what we were doing. So there's method in the madness. If you're thinking longer term, you're thinking process, you're thinking talent. It all starts with talent. Talent should not be biased by any demographic trait. None. This is the gist of this is female. It applies to everything. If the war for talent is so intense that you just are handicapping yourself unnecessarily, if you allow that bias to creep in to your management and leadership, it's just not good business. And if getting back to my passion, David and Goliath, I love looking like my target market when I have the salespeople and the service people and everybody else that look like the people we do business with. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Isn't that a wonderful thing? I would argue that builds we talk about relationships in business. It's good to have value. It's even better to have good relationships. What better way to get both? That's a twofer.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last big question. In our first conversation, you definitely shared your pride in the future of women, especially your daughters. So one of my most interesting topics to talk about is the idea of the lonely leader. And this is where many powerful women shared how isolating leadership can actually feel, especially as they climb higher. So how can we better prepare our future leaders to navigate this reality? And what would you tell your daughters about it?
I want to make sure I heard something. Our audio was a little fuzzy on something. Did you say the term lonely leader?
The lonely leader, yes.
Okay. I thought
So
that's
you
what
get
you
you
said.
get as you go higher up, you get lonelier because there's many reasons. Like who do you trust? Who has an
Understood.
agenda? Who does? Yeah.
Understood. I alluded earlier in our visit that I have been blessed by um, just wonderful mentors who, other than being of a pay forward type of mindset, they had no motivation to take me under their wing and teach me anything. But
Hmm.
they did. But they did. Uh, I feel compelled to do that to honor them. Um, I say that to promote a principle to answer your question. There is no such thing as a self made person. You can be the smartest person on earth. You can have nuclear power generating your ability to work 24/7, 365. But to think that's all it takes is not realistic. You have to have an opportunity to use something on yours. You want your female constituency to have equal opportunity. I may be paraphrasing that statement, but it was in your bio, and that stuck with me. It resonated. I want
Women
that
want
for
to be
our
treated
daughters.
equally, not identically.
I knew I wasn't perfectly reciting it, but
It was awesome.
the tenor resonated with me because that's exactly what Judy and I want for our daughters and
Hmm.
all women. It'd be a better world if we did things that way. How do you accomplish the? There's a fine line on loneliness. You sharing everything is not necessarily helpful either,
Correct.
but having trusted advisors, having intimates among peers, people who went ahead of you. I like the reverse thing too. There was a reverse mentoring thing. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I was in an organization at one time as the net was going nuts, and the CEO happened to recognize I don't know how to use this stuff, and he was not going to go to school to learn it. So he said, "Who knows this stuff?" And his human resource support said, "The people you're hiring." So he installed a reverse mentorship thing to help that out. So I'm going to describe something that sounds like a 360 for feedback. So I'm going to say intimates above, beside, including outside and below, people you trust. I do a lot of executive coaching, and the basic principle I do this, and it's mostly for portfolio company execs with equity sponsors. And my rules are really simple, and this principle is a corollary to this thing you've asked. I make a point of saying I don't wear orange for anybody. And they look at me funny. I said, a jumpsuit in prison, okay? I said, I don't. And besides, I'm a Georgia fan, and it reminds me of Tennessee, Auburn, and Florida. So we just don't go there. I said, what I'm really trying to tell you is, notwithstanding malfeasance, this is a priestly or rabbinical type exercise. I said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, if they don't trust me, they will not share what's bugging them or what they're trying to accomplish. You have to be comfortable that we can have those conversations, and it's up to them what they share with you. Otherwise, I'm not your person. And you know what? I've never been turned away. Never. And it is very, very fulfilling. So the real point I'm trying to make here is, and by the way, trust is mutual, and it works both ways. And if you have to work a lifetime to build trust, you can destroy it in one stupid mistake. So I would, and our daughters do this too. I am gratified that our daughters are comfortable talking to me about anything. That that makes me feel better than I could possibly put in words. But I know I'm not the only person with whom they do that. They do it with pioneers ahead of them, people that they trusted along the way. Could be in academics, could be in previous jobs. Are very keen on, I need to learn stuff from people behind me too, because
Mm-hmm.
the higher I get up the management ranks, I don't want a blind spot. So what's going on with the new hires? And you can accomplish this dynamically in very easy ways. Getting back to what I shared earlier about, we eat at least 2 meals a day on business time, and bagels, talking shop, and pizza over lunch. Really good times to say what's happening. Help. And by the way, here's something I need your help with. What do you think? So I I think it is a measured loneliness, uh, but if you're talking to the right people, you can talk very uh, about very sensitive things without fear of repercussions. That's what I'm after. Is it safe to have this conversation with this person?
And
I
I go
hope I
back
answered your
to
question.
know, yes, you did. And I go back to know your people. That's
Exactly.
basically what it is. Yeah. Okay,
Exactly.
sir.
Yeah.
So I know that there's going to be people that want to learn more about you and connect with you. So what's the best place they can do this?
I'll make it really easy. Uh, the website URL is middle, MIDDLE, market, MARKET, methods, plural, methods.com, middlemarketmethods.com. That's the website, of course, but there's an email address on there if you want to reach out. I write a quarterly value creation article that enjoys a nice private circulation. I do speaking engagements. I do consulting. You can get a good taste for what I do and how I go about it by looking on the website.
Awesome. 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 Well, thank you so much. I love how your brain works. This has been very, very, very insightful, and I really appreciate it. And so I just thank you. Thank you for your time.
Judy, the pleasure has been mine. This is, if nothing else comes across in a visit like this, is I love this stuff. I
I
just
know you do.
absolutely love this stuff. In helping David
Awesome.
take out Goliath and helping leaders develop their own version of profit rainmaking, that keeps me young in a lot of ways. And I love
Awesome.
it. So thank
Well,
you.
good. And you're welcome. And it shows. And I want to thank all of you for being with us today on Selling in a Skirt with Judy Hoberman. We are excited to bring you the most amazing women and men every single time we're together. So until next time, we'll see you then.